Hi, this is my response for the week 3 discussion post. We are specifically talking about accessible devices that we can use in the classroom. Based on the examples provided that we might be able to use, I essentially picked the app or the software for Quizlet, which is fairly known amongst most teachers. Specifically, I would use it for the subject matter of English. These would be in the ages typically that I'm working with right now is probably 10th to 11th grade. That tends to be the majority of students that I'm working with. From my perspective on the way it works, it is pretty friendly. I would say maybe helping students understand how to maneuver through it might be useful, such as how to search the proper set of questions that might be already available on Quizlet or ones that you've have made already for that specific subject matter or that lesson plan. Um, Another thing, it is pretty useful for most learners. I will say that probably taking the time to do a step-by-step process on how to use it if they're not familiar with it as a student would be very best for them to be able to use it on a more regular basis. I don't think that I would use Quizlet so much as a way to determine how much a child knows and doesn't know. It's more of a um, like a study technique that can be used, kind of like flashcards that we used back in the day. It's not very common now, but it is a way to get kids to kind of use that method of either queuing in on the keyword and then the definition in the back, or vice versa, depending on how you want to take it on. It works both ways from my experience for the students to learn. One thing I will say though is that it is focused a little more on the memorization part. So I would use it more on being able to memorize key terms for the lesson itself, not really the subject matter of it. So, for instance, if we're studying things about culture and the representations that it can hold, I wouldn't necessarily focus on the whole idea or concept of what culture is, more about words that might define it so that they can memorize those words and remember them for later usage when they're learning about more things that might be diverse when it comes to culture. And specifically, things, for example, when it comes to culture that we're doing in a lesson plan right now, is the difference between ethnic culture, right, and or social culture or media culture. All those fall under different variations of culture, but being able to understand what those types and themes are for culture really helps the student understand how culture may affect them or others. Um, One thing to consider also is I'd like to use it with this other app called GimKit. It's really useful when it comes to that. It's a mini game source that allows them to take multiple choice questions pertaining to the lesson, coincide with Quizlet. The reason being is because you can make the quizzes a little harder on GimKit, and by doing so, instead of just letting them pick a multiple choice question, they have the multiple choice questions, but because they are harder, now they have to use their Quizlet information that they've downloaded or studied to answer the questions on GameKit. So it's a very hands-on, interactive online platform that they get to use. It's two different apps, but it really focuses on how students can kind of progressively learn from both takes of it. I will say that again, practice, trial and error is very important for when using any type of software that you're going to uh, place into your classroom. Good thing about all these though is you can do these with just individual groups, right? So pair groups, small groups. You can compete between half the class versus the other half the class, quarter of the class versus the other three quarters of the class. So it can be done basically any shape or form that you want to do it. You can even encourage students to use it with their parents because they can essentially quiz the parents to help them quiz themselves, or the parents themselves can actually help quiz the students at home so that it prepares them further for the lesson plan in the classroom. Uh, these are probably the most beneficial ways of doing it, in which it diversifies it from just using it in the classroom, but also outside of it as well. It's a way of reinforcing the key terms and definitions that are going to be used in the lesson plan, and it creates good routine practice skills that are essential for any lesson to take into account.